Hello everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to mix up some SPI epoxy primer because a lot of you out there probably have never mixed up epoxy before or any 2-component, often called 2K paint system before, since there are many people new to the hobby getting into it. So what I have here is a quart can of epoxy. I'm trying to get this used up. It comes in gallons too. Generally, I would recommend getting a gallon kit at least for your car. You have, it's a 1-to-1 mix with the epoxy and the activator. So if you're getting a gallon, you're going to need to order 4 quarts of activator. 1-to-1 means there's 1 part of the primer with 1 part of the activator. So since this is just a quart here, we just have 1 quart of primer to 1 quart of activator. The second part is we're going to mix it up 1-to-1. So I got my mixing cup here. I had already poured some activator into there earlier just to make sure I had enough, which I do. So that's why there's some brown stuff in the bottom. But on your mixing cup, you'll see all kinds of different graduations. These are different mix ratios that you would use depending on the product you're using. So right here you see 1-to-1. That means if you want to make a 1-to-1, you would add your first component either to that 1, that 2, that 3, or that 4, depending on how much you want to mix up. And so you choose one of those depending how much volume you need, and then you go to the second number, and that's how much of the second component you add. So if you wanted to make up approximately 19 ounces or so, you would fill your first component to the first 4. So that'd be your primer, and then your activator you would pour until it gets up to the second 4. That'll give you about 19 ounces. It also has a plus 50% on there, which means if you wanted to add another 50% as something like a reducer or whatnot, if you wanted to reduce this, you could do that. I never reduce it. I like to use it at full strength. You may want to reduce it if you want no peel or something like that, but my personal preference is to not reduce. I don't like to recommend reducing either. So in this case, I'm only going to get about 19 ounces, and I want a little more than that. So what I do is I kind of cheat, because I'm going to be spraying an entire car today, or what I can get out of this. Like I say, I've got a new gallon kit coming in tomorrow, and I just want to use up this quart kit. So I'm going to fill it up to 24 ounces right there, and I'm going to use these graduations on the side. So I'm going to go to 24 ounces. I'm going to fill the primer up to 12 ounces, and then I'm going to add activator until it gets up to 24. We're going to mix it, and then we're going to activate it. All these instructions are on the side of the can for how to make it up, but sometimes it's easier to show in a video, and I know there's a lot of you out there using this stuff. So I've already got my funnel on. I've already mixed it. There will be a lot of solids on the bottom of the can. You want to make sure there's no solids left. If you got a bunch of solids, it kind of helps to mix it in a scoop like this. You bring it up and you might see a bunch of solids on the bottom of the stick. If you kind of mix those around in the paint, you'll dissolve them. The solvents in the paint will dissolve them, the primer I should be calling it. So you want to mix this up until you feel no more solids on the bottom of the can. Those solids are the meat and bones of your primer. Okay. So I've already mixed that up beforehand, so you didn't have to sit here and watch me mix it for a long time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it until it goes right up to that 12 ounces there. And hopefully I have 12 ounces in here. I should. So right there, I'm right at about 12 ounces of primer. So next, I'm going to add 12 ounces of my activator. So I'm pouring that right in there until it gets up to 24. And that'll mean 12 ounces of my primer and 12 ounces of my activator. That's a 1-to-1. That'll give me a total of 24 ounces. at the right ratio it needs to be. And that actually kills off that can of activator, so just about. And this can of epoxy is just about killed off too. So this is all I'm going to be able to spray today. The next thing I need to do is find where I put my stir stick. I'm going to grab another one. You'll see some bubbles and stuff on top when you pour the activator in, and that's completely normal. So now I'm going to stir it in a figure 8 motion. This is how I was taught by one of my paint instructors. He would have us stir like this for about 50 little stirs. So I'd sit here and I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until I got to 50, and then you let it sit for a while. So the activation is the most critical part of this epoxy. It's the most critical part of almost any paint component for that matter. But the SPI epoxy, on their can, in their instructions, they say let it activate for at least 30 minutes. And if you're in a hurry, maybe you're doing production shop work or something, you could do the 30 minutes and that would get you by. And I've done 30 minutes a lot as well, still have great success with it. However, if you want this to be the most durable it can possibly be, to offer you the most corrosion protection you could possibly get, it's actually recommended to let it induce for longer, up to 4 hours. So you could cover this up with foil once you've mixed it enough and let it sit for at least 30, or you could mix it up in the morning and spray it in the afternoon. That's going to give you a more robust product. You'll get at least 4 hours of induction on there. I know a lot of guys too that actually use this as their building primer, and so they'll let it induce overnight, and when you come back the next morning it might be a little thicker, and then they'll spray it out like that so they can actually get some building characteristics out of it, and they'll spray a couple coats of that and then actually sand it and use it to block down. This primer, unlike some epoxies, is a pretty soft epoxy, so you can block it and sand it pretty nicely. There was one other thing I wanted to say and I completely forgot what that was. Oh, the pot life. So the pot life, again, because some of you are new to this, the pot life is how long this will last as a liquid inside there before it starts to set up or starts to kick. And generally I can get about 48 hours out of it. That means if I mix this up, I can leave it sit here for about 48 hours and it'll still be a liquid. If I came out in 2 days, I could still probably spray it. Once you get to about 72 hours, sometimes it's still been a liquid for me. It could still be sprayable, but it's going to be getting pretty close to completely kicked by that point. If you leave it out here long enough, you will see that it will become a solid hard puck in the bottom of your cup. Anyways, now all I'm going to do is just put some foil on top of this, and I'll let it sit here for, I'll probably be a couple hours before I go to spray it, so I can get some good induction out of it, and then I'll load it up and spray it. So that is how you mix up the SPI epoxy. It is hands down one of the best epoxies out there. It'll give you great service and many years of life. You just got to know how to use it. Hey guys, I just want to come back and show you a little update. This is what this looks like after it's been inducing for a while. You'll notice it might not look completely uniform and gray like the primer did, or like it did when you first mix it up. It has a little bit of a blackish and kind of looks like you get little black and brown swirls in there. You also get some bubbles in there, and it just loses that gray color. This is completely normal, and that's what it does. You're witnessing the miracle of chemistry right now. So it is inducing as we sit here and speak, and you'll notice if you just come out and mix it up a little bit more. If inducing it for a long time, I like to come out and mix it up periodically, and you'll notice that it turns to a gray again. And when you're ready to shoot it for the final time, it'll become a nice gray like that, and it'll also come out your gun a nice gray like that, because as it atomizes, as it moves through your gun, it gets mixed together just a little bit as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is your tip size for your gun. It does say this on the can, but I can also tell you just out of my own personal experience, I shoot it out of a 1.4 or 1.5 millimeter tip. Works pretty well. If you want to put it on super heavy, I suppose you could use a 1.8 millimeter. Here's one thing that comes up a lot that I do want to mention, because I see this on a lot of forums too. Some people will spray their epoxy, maybe it's their first time, and they'll come back, post a question, maybe on the SPI user forums or another paint and body forum or whatnot, and say, I see these little dimples, I see these little fish eyes. What is wrong with this epoxy? Or what's wrong with my surface prep? And the answer is neither. There's nothing wrong with your epoxy, and there's probably nothing wrong with your surface prep either, assuming you followed the instructions and cleaned it really well with the wax and grease remover beforehand. I'm not saying you can't get fish eyes if there's grease or some other kind of contamination on the metal, because you absolutely can. But the most common thing I've personally witnessed myself with this epoxy in particular is you might get this effect where you see all of these little spots together. It kind of looks like, I don't know, I guess I can't think of a good analogy for it. But you'll see just a bunch of little fish eyes in one spot. That happens when you have put too much material on. And I do that sometimes. You get your gun too close or something, and you get too much material on in that spot, and it kind of separates and pulls away from itself, and then you get all these little fish eyes. Not a big deal. All you got to do is wait till it dries, and then come back and just hit it with some, you can use 220 or whatever you got. I use 220. Hit it with some 220, sand it down, level it. You'll sand those right away. You can even do that in between your coats. So then your next coat, you can, your next spray coat, I should say, you just spray over it, hit it, and then you're good to go. So don't worry if you got those. I don't have any examples to show you, but you'll know soon enough. You'll know the second you see them. You'll say, oh my gosh, that's what that guy in that video was talking about. And now you know what to do. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours, and you can see the epoxy actually looks really black now after inducing for this long. And we kind of have a little layer of some black on top and mostly gray on the bottom. I also cleaned my bench just a little bit while I was away. A little bit embarrassing earlier, but that's how it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and just mix it up. Get it all back stirred. I'm just getting ready to spray it now. Anyways, that's it. That is the epoxy after it's induced for 4 hours. And now I'm going to go shoot this car with it. Hey everybody, one more final comment. I decided to do a change of scenery, so I'm here with my 67 Mustang. That is finished in all SPI with their epoxy, 2K regular build primer, and universal clear, and the white stripes are also SPI white base coat, and then the blue is actually Pro Spray, and that's a Viper GTS blue. But I just want to come back and tell you a quick note on those primers. All 4 colors of the primers, which are white, black, gray, and red oxide. If they have any other colors, I'm not aware of that. All 4 colors of the epoxy do have UV inhibitor in them. To get the maximum benefit from that UV inhibitor, you need to let it induce for at least 4 hours. So hopefully that's my final update, and thanks for watching.